was born on September 1st in 1989 in a hospital in Palm Springs. My parents were very young and did their very best to create a family with the few tools that they had. My grandpa on my dad's side was a drunk, and my grandfather on my mom's side was an abusive con man who had recently passed away at the time. My mom grew up with a very intense background, yet she learned to cope surprisingly well, proof that anyone can come out of a terrible situation. I grew up in Yucca Valley with my younger brother Justin, our dog Sassy, and our cat Janie. I went to public school for a few years before I had to move to a private school from 4th grade into 10th grade. I was liked for the most part, but I got teased because I had a unibrow. One day I came home in tears, sobbing hysterically that kids had been making fun of me all day long, and I asked my mom to help me take care of it. I played a lot of video games to help me escape from the reality that I was an awkward kid who didn't really fit in with pretty much anyone. I did my own thing and didn't follow the crowd because people my age intimidated me. I started dating this girl named Crystal at the end of 10th grade because all of our friends said that we would make a perfect couple. But I knew that it would never work out because I was more attracted to her brother than I was to her. I remember my dad told me once that if I ever told him that I liked boys, I wouldn't be his son anymore, and that terrified me to no end, so I kept my mouth shut and pretended I liked girls. Crystal and I broke up less than a year later after I was in public school, and shortly after I met this girl named Annie, who I thought was the coolest person in the entire world. I would have married her if given the opportunity. We went to prom together and I was totally in love with her. My friend Sarah in high school accidentally introduced me to a word that I had never heard of because my parents sheltered me so much. So I googled it, and I suddenly found myself totally wrapped up in pornography. I would come home almost every day from school and sneak on the internet and watch videos for hours until my parents came home. When I went to community college, I still had very few friends, and my increased sexuality and attraction to guys made me feel awkward and insecure around people since I grew up in an ultra-conservative town. I told a guy in one of my classes who I had a huge crush on that I might have been gay, and he told all of my friends and tried to ruin my friendship with them. I was able to lie my way out of it, and they believed me instead of him. I felt alone and outcasted continually because I grew up in a really conservative town. People around me hated gays, and my parents were constantly saying that the gays were the problems for everything in the world. I kept watching porn, and I eventually discovered that I could use my webcam to broadcast myself onto the internet. I would spend hours every night on chat rooms trying to find guys who were interested in me, but none of them were really that great, and I just wanted to see their dicks. I had a warped sense of love and acceptance, and I was hoping someone online would want to be with me forever and save me from my life. My dad one night caught me watching porn on my laptop and made a huge raging deal of it and put me into sex therapy. I had to go to a Sexaholics Anonymous group at my church for a whole year with a bunch of guys who were much older than me. I was humiliated, but in the end, very grateful to finally meet a group of guys who were genuinely interested in me as a person and to see my well-being in the future. That was something I had never really had before. It was in that group that I met my very best friend at the time, Patrick, who made me feel like I was the most important friend to him. No one had ever shown me brotherly love before, and I felt accepted finally in my life. I was incredibly unstable with relationships because I never really felt accepted by anyone around me, and yet I felt really special with Patrick. He eventually moved away to Oregon to go to school, but promised we would still keep in contact. He invited me up to see him the following summer, so I spent my entire savings account for a plane ticket to go up and see him. I felt free from my parents, like I wasn't judged by anyone, and I tasted freedom from my home that I'd never experienced. It was the most life-changing point of my life, and I never wanted to come home. Unfortunately, I did, though, and I felt like I was trapped by my judgmental parents all over again. That year, I tried asking my friend Annie to be my girlfriend. I finally had confidence from being friends with Patrick that I felt like I could make it work with her. I sent her flowers on Valentine's Day with a card, and that night I got a call telling me that she had a boyfriend, even though we had been talking for months and she never mentioned it one time. I was devastated, and all of my self-confidence issues fell right back down again. I moved away to university in 2009, where I met some of the best friends I ever made. Even though I hated my roommates, my neighbors were absolutely the coolest people in the entire world. That's why I met Lauren, who has been the best friend I ever made. The first night we met, she made brownies for a bunch of us, and that pretty much was the beginning of our friendship. One day, a fight with my roommates escalated to one of them threatening me, and I moved out that night. I moved into an apartment with two guys in a different part of the apartment complex who were friends with one of my very good friends. One of them was named Jake. He was pretty cool, but very dense. The other's name was David, and he was creepy. He looked a little bit like Smeagol. David asked me one day if we could compare our penis sizes, and me, not knowing what to do and still being sexually confused, agreed. Nothing happened after that point, and I was sure that that was the end. I thought he was just weird and wouldn't do anything after that. I got really sick that November and was on medication for several days. One day I was passed out on the couch and David came home to quote-unquote help me feel better. I was so medicated and unconscious that I didn't realize that David had sat down on my lap, had taken off my pants, and was playing with my penis. When I finally realized what was going on, I stopped him and pushed him away, but I was so scared and terrified that I didn't know what to do. He wasn't in the apartment for quite a while, and we eventually talked about what happened through Facebook messaging because he just wouldn't come home. He implied that he had high connections, and if I said something, he would make sure to tell his high connections that I was the one who asked him to do what he did. I was so scared of being kicked out of school because it was a Christian college that I didn't tell anyone except for a few friends who encouraged me to tell administration, but I was too scared because I thought he would either come after me or he would have me kicked out or who knows what he would do. I was just terrified. I wanted to tell Patrick, but I was scared that he would come down and kill David when he planned to come down and visit during spring break. That night of spring break, he was supposed to come down on a train to me. He missed his train time and couldn't come down because the expense of getting a new ticket wasn't financially possible. I was very hurt and he was upset and we hardly talked after that. I was devastated that I lost my best friend, but Lauren showed me so much love and compassion that I realized that I didn't need him as a friend to be happy, that I could just be me and be happy with that, and that was something that really I could never ever forget, and that's why she's been my best friend. I met my friend Julie that year, and I seriously considered dating her. We eventually started making YouTube videos together, which we called the Vlog of Awesomeness, where we just talked because we thought we were funny. I had been making silly YouTube videos for a while, but this was the most fun I ever had making videos. I met my second girlfriend Chelsea in the year 2010, and we started dating on New Year's Day. She was amazing and made me feel more confident than I had in a long time. I came out to her about what happened with David, and she encouraged me to tell my parents and administration. I finally did, and my parents were confused and didn't know how to help or what to say. Administration was confused on why I hadn't said anything sooner, and pretty much seemed non-understanding of why it took me so long, even though I told them I was terrified of what David would do to me if I said something. Eventually, everything was sorted out, and the school encouraged me to go to therapy to work out whatever remaining issues I may have had about what happened with David. I saw a school therapist and he helped me work out the issues I had, and we eventually decided that a lot of my self-doubt and confidence issues stemmed from my inability to admit that I was attracted to males as well as females. I came out to Chelsea and she broke up with me the next day, not understanding that I could have stayed with her if she would have let me. I was hurt and heartbroken and I wasn't sure what to do next. A lot of my friends encouraged me as much as they could, but none of them really knew why she broke up with me, so they didn't know what to say. I eventually started telling my friends about my sexuality, and they were beyond understanding. A few of them didn't understand and refused to know more about it, which I expected that some of my friends would be okay with me and others would not, but I was still hurt when my very close friends said that they didn't want to know. I eventually started online dating, very discreetly, and tried to meet up with a few different guys for dates, but never really found anyone interesting enough to me. One guy started online stalking me actually, and found my YouTube videos somehow and started bugging me constantly, wanting me to go out on a date with him, wanting me to come to his apartment, wanting me to do all kinds of things with him. I didn't really know how to say no and he kept bothering me, so I just ignored him after a while. Eventually I met this guy named Jacob who was really sweet and funny, and we talked for a month before we decided to go on a date. We went on our first date on June 30th, 2011, and a few days later I asked him to be my boyfriend, because I pretty much fell in love with him on that very first date. I kept this part of my life a secret from all of my friends except for Lauren, and when I eventually started telling them, they were concerned about how my parents would react. When I eventually did tell my parents, they reacted badly. I was staying at their house for the weekend, and when I told them, they put me in their car, drove me back to my apartment, and dropped me off, taking the car they had given to me and my cell phone, leaving me stranded. They said that they had never been more disappointed and didn't want to talk to me until I was better, and that I needed to change to be with them as a family again. I was too in love with Jacob, and I was willing to risk everything to be with him. And if my parents weren't going to be accepting of me, I would be hurt and heartbroken, but I would be willing to accept my life. I was in the strongest point I had ever been in emotionally, and I handled my parents' reaction so much stronger than I thought I would have. I saved up enough money and bought a piece of crap car, got a new job, and continued to pursue my college education in clinical psychology. I decided that a year into graduate school though that I was on the wrong path, and I decided to work as much as I possibly could. I moved to a new apartment closer to Jacob, continued to work, and tried to push on with my life. While my life didn't exactly happen like I wanted it to, I've learned to be okay with that. I grew through every experience, through all the pain. I became a stronger person, and even though it was uncomfortable, I know that I was given exactly what I needed to become the person I am now. I continually push and fight to stay strong. My parents have recently come around and wanted to start a relationship with me, and we're trying to find ways to make it work out. But me wanting to marry Jacob puts obvious strains on our relationship as a family. My parents aren't perfect people, but they have tried their best to do what they thought was right. I know a lot of you might get angry at them while watching this video, but please understand that I hold no anger towards them anymore, and we are trying to make things work again. This is my Draw My Life so far, and I hope that in 10 more years I can add so many more stories to what has happened to my life. Thank you all for watching this side of my life, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I'll see you all later.